Have you ever asked yourself, what will happen after I die? Will I go to an afterlife and meet the one who created all? Will I reunite with loved ones? Will I be reborn into another body, or even animal? Will my soul return to the universe? Or will there be nothing but an endless void for all of eternity? What happens to my physical body? Perhaps you spent too much time dwelling upon it. Well, you're not alone, because for nearly 3 million years, our species have been wondering the exact same thing. We try to answer these questions through the lens of religion, history, science, and philosophy. So, what happens after we die?
We want to learn more about this topic and talk to experts in order to see what we can find through religious beliefs, scientific research, and philosophical perspectives.
Death is one of the few things that is guaranteed in everyone's lifetime, yet we seem to hardly know anything about it. So, come with us as we explore the journey of death. We couldn't talk about what happens after death without diving into the science of it. You'd be surprised by the gross and disturbing stuff that happens to the human body prior to death. First, the heart stops beating.
Side note, the brain stops functioning about 6 to 10 minutes after the heart stops beating, meaning the brain may be somewhat aware of dying.
The lack of blood causes the skin to appear very pale. This stage is called pallor mortis. The muscles will then loosen up. This is when most people release poop and pee. Body temperature will also drop to match its surrounding. This process is called rigor mortis, aka the death chill. The pupils dilate, the joints and limbs are really flexible, and the skin sags.
After 2 to 6 hours, as a result of no heartbeat, the blood begins to get pulled down by gravity and pools up in the body. This process is called rigor mortis. The body parts nearest to the ground begin to appear a bluish-purple color. A process called rigor mortis leads to muscles slowly becoming stiff, starting from the face and moving down.
After 7 to 12 hours, the body is very stiff and the joints are very hard to move and manipulate. After 12 to 72 hours, chemical changes in the body's cells cause the muscles to loosen up and the internal organs will start to decompose. This is a process called secondary flaccidity. The skin also shrinks, making it seem as if the hair and nails are growing.
After 3 to 5 days, blood-containing foam will leak out of the mouth and nose. After 8 to 10 days, the body turns from green to red and blood starts to decompose.
Several weeks after death, the nails and teeth fall out, and 1 month after death, the body starts to liquefy. We had a chance to talk to forensic pathologist Dr. Matthew Ord. Here's what he has to say about his personal experiences working firsthand with dead bodies.
Talking about lifestyle choices in general, if someone is obese, then the obesity is an issue because it's like insulating a body. It keeps it warm for longer, which means that the processes of decomposition are accelerated because the process of decomposition is temperature dependent. So a body in a warm environment will decompose more quickly than a body in a cool environment, and that's why we use fridges, of course. Bodies can make a variety of sounds, and typically the common sound is a sort of a hissing sound. There can be some fluid in the air as well, so it can be sort of a but bodies typically don't make the sound on their own unless you move them, so you're squeezing the air out of their lungs. Having said that, when the decomposition process starts, it produces gas, and the gas has to go somewhere, so you'll see a decomposed body has a big swollen tummy, for example. That's the gas building up inside. Then gas is produced in the lungs, and that can bubble up through the airways and make a hissing sound, or it's like, well, decomposing bodies, certainly some organs also work effectively after someone's died. So, for example, a kidney transplant, and if I was driving out tonight and God forbid was in a car crash and smash and was dead, then my kidneys can be taken out and they can be transplanted to someone else. Quite commonly, the fronts of the eyes, the corneas, can be used after death to give to someone who's got corneal disease, where the fronts of their own eyes has been damaged, and you can basically give them eyesight again. And I know that those eyes can be taken for up to a couple of days or so after death.
Wow.
So it depends upon the organ.
We couldn't talk about life after death without taking into consideration the wide variety of beliefs that derive from religion. Religion influences most of the theories we have on life after death today. Unlike modern medicine, religion often defines death with unobservable criteria.
Almost all religions can agree that death is not the end of the soul's existence, and there are many different ideologies and beliefs about what happens after life. Some religions have very consistent beliefs across all its followers, while other religious teachings are more open to interpretation.
We must take into consideration the views from the 5 great religions of the world: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, as well as the ancient Greeks and Egyptians. Looking into the diverse religion of Judaism, there was quite a wide variety of Jewish beliefs of life after death.
3 prominent beliefs in Jewish tradition include the immortality of the soul, the world to come, and the resurrection of the dead. The world to come represents the belief that the current world or current age is flawed or cursed and will be replaced in the future by a better world or paradise. This concept is related to the idea of heaven and hell, but both beliefs still differ significantly. Some beliefs in Judaism include the traditional view expecting the unity of flesh and spirit in a resurrected body. There's also the idea that we live on in our children and grandchildren to a sense of heaven. Jewish scholars have attempted to clarify these ideas. However, it would be impossible to reconcile all Jewish texts and sources that discuss the afterlife.
Next we have Hinduism and Buddhism, which are 2 religions that have similarities in their beliefs of the afterlife. Both believe in reincarnation, but they certainly have their differences.
When it comes to Buddhism, most Buddhists believe that when you die, you don't go somewhere else, but instead that you are reborn as something and someone completely different.
Buddhists believe our consciousness is like a flame on the candle of our body. At the moment of death, we leave the body, but this flame, particularly our flame of moral credit or debit, goes into a new body. In Buddhism, this karmic flag of consciousness plays the same role as the soul in other religions. Hinduism, which is one of the oldest religions in the world, began the concept of reincarnation.
The belief within Hinduism is that there has never been a time when souls did not exist. We have all existed into the infinite past. This is called SAMSARA, the infinite cycle of birth, death, and rebirth.
The concept of SAMSARA in Hinduism is reincarnation, the idea that after we die, our soul will be born again into another body, possibly as an animal or a human or perhaps a god, but always in a regular cycle of death and resurrection. When comparing the 2 religions, like Hinduism, Buddhism accepts there was no time when we were not bound to the cycle of birth and rebirth.
Reincarnation is where the 2 religions differ the most in regards to the afterlife. Both follow that the lives recycle into new forms and that the cycle will continue, and each life is a goal to reach at the end of the cycle.
Buddhism regards rebirth as a flow of life from one to the other, while Hinduism views it as an actual soul changing the bodies it inhabits.
Due to both religions' belief in reincarnation, they choose to cremate their loved ones as they believe it is the quickest way to release the soul and help with reincarnation.
And next, Christians and Muslims. In both religions, they generally believe that when they die, God judges them and their soul goes to a place of reward or punishment.
Although both religions share similar ideologies on life after death, the specific factors are still quite different.
In Islam, when you die, your soul will enter a state of waiting. When the final judgment day comes, God will judge you based on your good and bad deeds. You will either be sent to Jannah, paradise, or Jahannam, hell.
Some Christians believe God judges us immediately after death individually and sends us to either heaven or hell. Other Christians believe God judges all of us on a final judgment day. The decision is made based on whether you've been a good or bad person during your lifetime. And lastly, we have atheism, which seems like a simple concept. Someone who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. Although that is true, it is the only common thread that ties all atheists together, as atheism lacks a singular belief system.
Atheists are given the freedom to come up with their own meaning to what happens after we die.
The vast majority of atheists don't believe in any gods, so nothing happens after we die and there is no afterlife. Some atheists are more open to the possibility of an afterlife, but don't necessarily believe in one ending. Similar to their unclear belief system, there isn't one specific view of how a funeral should be conducted. Atheist funerals aren't that different from religious funerals. They include many of the same elements minus prayers, religious songs, and certain traditions. Some atheists may prefer cremation over traditional burial. Some atheists may want a memorial service, while others may want something less traditional.
To learn more about the ancient Greeks and Egyptians' belief on the afterlife, we talked to expert Megan Daniels, who is an assistant professor at UBC in the Department of Ancient Greek Material and Culture.
There's different things that would happen to you, but there certainly was a belief in the afterlife amongst the Greeks and amongst other ancient peoples in that region, like the Egyptians and other peoples. They both had concepts that you had to live a good and moral life, that your family and yourself had to take preparations for your death, and that you had to kind of the journey. There was a specific journey that you had to take to the underworld to attain the blessed afterlife. That a lot of things we know about ancient beliefs come from people who had the means to leave remains, to leave gravestones or leave offerings, right? These are people who would have had at least some money. There are differences and similarities. I mean, broadly, they both believed that there was a kind of soul, an essence of the individual that would live on, and that had to be cared for, right? So you had to bury them properly, you had to honor their memory, you had to commemorate them, to ensure the person had a good afterlife, and that was very much dependent on usually the family. There was definitely a moral component. The idea was that people's souls would go to Hades, which is the underworld. So if you had been an upright person, a hero, if you were the opposite and you had done bad things in your life, you had lived immorally, you hadn't taken any restraints in your life, you would end up in the deep black pit of hell called Tartarus. So if your family didn't pay the proper respects to you at your death, do the proper burial rites at your death, you could end up kind of just wandering in the kind of nether world, like kind of the in-between place. The Egyptians was concepts, the kind of specific things that had to be done to ensure a good afterlife seemed to be much more elaborate, especially for really elite people, like rich people. Like for the Egyptians, they very much based their afterlife beliefs on the idea of the sun, right? They thought the sun went kind of around the earth and went under the earth, and that the sun every day, every night would battle these kind of demons in the underworld and then be reborn in the east. That was a great metaphor for the Egyptians. But one of the other significant ceremonies for the Egyptian preparation for the afterlife was you wanted to embalm and mummify the body, right? Because there was this belief that the body had to be preserved for the soul to return to, so the soul would know where to come back to. Several weeks process where they dried out your body with salt called natron, removed your vital organs, placed those in jars, and then proceeded to wrap the mummy after it was totally dried out. Burying it in the desert in Egypt is also a dry condition, so that would help preserve you. Another major ceremony once that mummy was ready, what's called the opening of the mouth ceremony, when they would take kind of a sickle, almost like a hooked stick, and it's usually someone very important in your family, would open the mummy's mouth, and that was so that you could eat and drink in the afterlife. But we have lots of accounts of the spells that had to be recited for the deceased. It's a whole collection of spells that they were using and that people would have prepared for themselves so that they could take with them to their grave. The afterlife was kind of like a mirror of your life on Earth as a human, whatever you had done. In some periods they inhumed bodies, right? They put them in the ground as bodies. In other periods they focus more on cremating the bodies. So there's tons of other spells after that. But yeah, the mummification, the opening of the mouth, the journey through the underworld, and the way to battle demons, and then the weighing of the heart were major ones.
Since ancient times, philosophy has had an influence on topics surrounding death. Philosophical views on death can vary from individual, popular, and famous theories. Most people can agree that death is the end of the physical body's life, but not necessarily for the soul's life.
Some people think when you die, your soul is reborn into another body, but you don't remember anything from your past life. One philosophical theory about the afterlife is the theory of the astral body.
The astral body is a copy of the physical body that is part of the ethereal dimension. It is not solid, so it can't go through walls. It is also immortal, so when the physical body dies, the astral body leaves the physical body, however, it lives on.
Some people believe that space and time isn't an object, but more of a tool for humans. If you took away space and time, we would still exist as energy. So when we die, we are just energy. Greek philosopher Plato's theory of death was that the physical world limited humans, and once we die, our souls will move on to a better life where we can find our true purpose.
Greek philosopher Socrates also saw death as a benefit because it allows your mind to be in the best form without having to deal with the basic struggles of having a human body. The Pythagoreans, who are followers of Greek philosopher Pythagoras, believe that when humans die, the soul is rebirthed into animals and all living things are connected in a way.
Now that we've been over the science, history, philosophy, and religious views on death, it's time to face the question one last time. What happens after we die? Well, we know what happens to our physical body after we die, but in terms of our soul, I guess we're just gonna have to wait and find out.